Hello and welcome back, everybody, to the DanJohnUniversity.com podcast. I'm Dan John, and this is episode 222 of our podcast. Each and every week, I sit down and I answer your questions. If you have a question, send them to podcast@DanJohnUniversity.com. I do my best to answer each and every one. There's some questions that are a bit, repeated, like people comment how many times I've answered the same question. But, a lot of people, they're new to at least maybe new to my information or whatever. So I think there's always value in answering the questions as they come. So thank you, and let's get started. We have a good group of questions today, and I hope you like it. So our first question today comes from Corey. How has your thinking on easy strength evolved since the original writing versus newer courses and books? So going back, we're going back about 20 years. So, and then to when I first started doing it, and then 10 years about since we wrote the book together, Pavel and I, and then just months or so since I rewrote the book. And I'll do my best to and answer that question for you, okay? He said, he also asked a follow-up on the experience of writing about the book. And I just talked about that in a podcast, and maybe I'll touch on it again. The big one would be, I'm still struggling with my ability to explain something I think is pretty simple. You give yourself 40 workouts. That's the base. The base is the 40 workout idea. The 40-day workout is how I first explained it in a T-Nation article. And then later we just called it easy strength, which is fine. But the idea is that you're going to do basically the same, say 5 exercises for the next, 40 workouts. And the idea is what you want to do is over those 40 workouts, get in there, get the reps in, come back the next day, do it again. And when the weight feels light, add weight. Well, that is totally logical to me. I understand that fully, but a lot of people maybe don't have my experience. I mean, I started lifting weights in 1965, so I know when a weight feels light. There are days like today in my workout, weights I typically lift were heavy. Now we had a long weekend. It's much colder than it was. Also in the middle of a fast. Nothing heroic. It's just a 24-hour one. But, if you fast, it's a cold morning, you're fasting, had a long weekend, I went to a football game, lots going on. Sometimes you're just not as strong. Life does that to you. So I understand when I get in the gym and I'm trying to press and, that feels a little heavy. It feels a little heavy today. What I would say to most people now, and this would be the first thing, Corey, I would recommend, is always leave reps in the tank. I think that's the way a lot of people say it now. But if I know I'm doing a lift and I know I can do 2 or 3 more, generally on easy strength, that's where I would stop. I am amazed, Corey, frankly amazed, when people don't have that body awareness to figure out that, I don't have 2 or 3 more reps in, 12, crash, 13, versus me going 8, 9, 10, I might be done here, rack it up. So that's number one. I do try to tell people, try to leave reps in the tank versus trying to explain what easy means. Percents never work. I explain that in just about every book I've written. If you're asked to lift what you did on Saturday at the weightlifting meet on Monday, being in front of a crowd and, having 3 officials and, weighing in and having all of the nerves, you're much stronger, at least I'm much stronger with the crowd, the energy of the travel, the staying in a hotel, raising the stakes on those lifts. And other people have never had those experiences. So, maybe they can do, I work with people who might be able to bench press 135 for 10 reps and fail at 140, which is completely out of my experience. So I don't trust percents. Some people can't yet judge what light is. So basically, I now say leave some in the tank. The second thing I think that really came clear to me, I write about it, and when I talked to Pavel, when we were still going to write the second edition together, it's something he liked a lot. It's this idea that I think that there's a quadrant of people who are good at, okay, so on the top is push, pull, and on the side is hinge, squat. I think there are people who are naturally more gifted at pushing. Hi, I'm one of them. A lot of people are better at pulling. You'll meet the person that can just do pull-ups all day long. And, I sit back, and we're discussing my best pull-ups of my career the other day. And, it was when I was in high school, and I was doing it for it was a test for football. And I just spent the summer doing pull-ups to prep for this test. Well, it makes sense. That's the most I ever did, because I was getting ready for football season. My body weight was quite low. My strength was quite high. And so I did more pull-ups. That's the only time I ever did a decent number of pull-ups. And it was only 14. Whereas, I've done, like 35 dips. Now, I know that's not impressive, but, I made some big lifts as a kid. And I've always been a very good presser. So I'm a natural presser. Pavel, for example, is a natural puller. When I went through that story, there's this kettlebell called the Beast. The first time I ever pressed the Beast is the first time I ever saw one. I walked over at it at the, must have been the UCLA cert or the San Diego cert. I picked it up and pressed it because it was on the floor, and I tried it. I mean, I know other people can train their whole life and not do it. I'm not bragging, because that same person hops up on the pull-up bar and gets a rep in, and I'm embarrassed. On the other two sides, of course, is hinge and squat. And there are people who are naturally better at hinging. Hi, me. And other people are better at squatting. When I look at the Olympic lifters nowadays at the World Championships, they are just designed to, come out of that deep, either snatch squat or front squat, the clean front squat. They're just built for it. And sports tend to start to drive you into it. So I came up with a little quadrant. I'm kind of the poster boy for push hinge. Funny, Pavel and I conversation. He's the poster boy for pull hinge. If you look at that tactical strength challenge that his company sponsors, it's pull-ups, kettlebell snatches, and deadlifts. Well, that's pull hinge. You'll meet some people who are push squatters, generally Olympic lifters, and then there's other people who are push squatters, and there's other people who are push hingers. I sometimes, in my own work, will confuse that up a little bit. But a push squatter tends to be an Olympic lifter, where you just slide over a little bit, where a pull squatter is probably a great rock climber. If I confuse that at all, it's very simple when you graph it out and you think about it. Certain sports are probably better to be a push hinger. I'm thinking American football. And other sports like, Olympic lifting is probably better to be a push squatter. So that's the second thing. And the third thing was, of course, this is more recent, is how, if you can, walk after every easy strength workout. That is just something I've been doing, and the people I work with who do it, they're getting body composition changes without even trying. And I think, Corey, that was the thing that really amazed me the most. The book I wrote on fat loss with Josh Hillis, back in the day, we have the push, the pull, the hinge, and the squat in there. And I think it's a good book. But if you read the book Easy Straight for Fat Loss, the newer book, we do, in some cases, the exact same thing, but we add that dedicated walking after, which isn't very, it isn't brutal at all, but it's good stuff. You ask, in a follow-up here, you ask what it was like co-authoring the original Easy Strength with Pavel. I really enjoyed it. I felt like we really, it was going well. I explained in another video. What I didn't know at the time is behind the scenes, Pavel and Pavel's relationship with Dragon Door was getting bad. And it's funny, everyone who encouraged it, a lot of people who encouraged the breakup back in the day have called me and said, oh, I wish I could do it again. I wouldn't have encouraged it. But I didn't know that. But I really enjoyed working with Pavel. I think we both look at strength and conditioning from the same basic lens. I think Pavel explains things better with numbers and programming. And I think I explain things better with more of a kind of a do this and here's something you want to think about. I'm being much more. I think I more walk with you as an athlete, whereas Pavel leans heavily into the raw numbers a little bit more. I think both of us are good at the opposite too, but it's just real obvious in our writing styles when you look at it. Hey, that was a good question. Okay. Appreciate it. And I always enjoy talking about the Easy Strength book. Folks, if you don't know where to find them, go to danjohnuniversity.com/bookstore and those books are there. Okay. Jeff has a question that ties right in a way to what we just said. Any chance you could briefly talk or write about what sort of wrist and ankle weights you recommend for zone 2 cardio works? I'm not a big fan of the phrase zone 2, but I understand why we're using it now. For the average Joe and or washed up meathead, assuming their strength and work capacity is generally above average. Okay. I heard you touch on the idea briefly somewhere recently, and I'm planning to start wearing ankle weights when it's cold enough to cover them with sweats while doing your zone 2. I would say of the options between hand weights, a weighted vest, and ankle weights, I would say that for zone 2 work, ankle weights would be the worst choice. But if you're trying to really improve your gait pattern, a GAIT, your walking pattern, I'm surprised how good ankle weights can be to teach yourself, relearn would probably be a better way to say it, to let the legs swing through. When it comes to fat loss and conditioning, it's hard for me to tell you which one's better, weight vests or hand weights. I started experimenting, in fact, I was just wearing it, with wearing a 10-pound weight vest versus the 30 and 60 pounders I used to wear. Since we know that the 3 best ways to lose body fat are, it's interesting, it's sleeping, it's sitting, and it's walking. Now, obviously there's more to it than that, but when you just do the raw numbers, that's the truth. But so if you're walking with just a 10-pound vest, we picked up on this a couple of weeks ago. My friend Chris was here, Chris from Canada, and it's interesting. He was wearing a vest, and he said it's weird because he was doing the zone 2 thing, and he goes, "I'm too low." So with no weights in his hands, I asked him just to swing his hands a little bit more. His heart rate jumped up 12 beats, and honestly, it wasn't even a discus throw away. It wasn't even that far. It was from right there to this truck that's around the corner, and it was radically different. So with a vest on, you can get your heart rate higher just by swinging your hands. Now, that brings us to the hand weights, which, I'm still a big fan of Leonard Schwartz, his heavy hands materials. I still think that if you're just trying to raise your heart rate, that by walking with, and the weights aren't very heavy, 2 pounds, 3 pounds, a kilo or 2 per hand, really does jack up that heart rate. Now, you have to make sure you do the math and make sure you keep your heart rate down low. I want you to breathe in that kind of, that you got to be able to talk while you're doing this, and you have to be able to, but it has to be kind of a caught. It's like when I'm trying to imitate right now, when you're trying to, so you're talking to your friend about this book that you read. That's kind of where you need to be for most people in their heart rate. So on ankle weights, if you decide to do them, I use 5-pounders and they work out really well. 2 to 5 pounds on the hand weights are good. And then on the vest, I don't know, as I'm talking right now on this podcast, what direction's the best, the 10 pound or the 60. But I'm starting to think weight vest should be lighter than I used to think. Ozzy, I'm going to close the door. So Jeff, to answer your question straight up, I think for cardio work, I think hand weights are probably the best. Oddly, in my new experiments with lighter vests, I'm starting to actually rethink it a little bit, though I'm still going to say that Leonard Schwartz's heavy hands is right, because you can really jack your heart rate up with heavy hands. And walking with a vest, you're gonna get yourself in the zone that you're in, and it's gonna be hard to move it. Ankle weights, you probably have to at least have 5, and it might be the least noticeable of the 3 options. I have experimented with ankle weights, a vest, and heavy hands. I tested out. I found it a little uncomfortable, not the load, but just the having all the equipment. Ankle weights sometimes will swing around. I always tell people, make sure you wear socks, because they can rub you. They can rub the skin off of you, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I think it's a great way to get into zone 2. And it's a great way, by the way, to do housework. If you really want to get a good workout, put on a light vest and ankle weights and go do chores. It's exhausting. And every time you pick up anything off the floor, you're getting this weird hinge movement, which is great. Thank you. Good question. Appreciate it. Got a question from Martin. I much prefer doing superset circuits of a few exercises such as pull-ups, squats, sit-ups, and a press, compared to completing each one in an isolated fashion for 3 sets. Superset circuits allow me more rest between repeating the movement, and I find I can lift heavier, 10 to 12 minutes break versus 3 to 5. What are your thoughts on going back-to-back sets versus supersets? Martin, I mean, it is honestly what you're talking about is the fundamentals. It's the basics of what we do in the weight room. I'm working on a new book now. I don't know how much time I want to explain this in the book, because I feel like I talk about it all the time. And once again, in a way, we're talking about it again. But the very first level of training is volume. I mean, this is nothing new. There's hundreds of years of experience behind this. But in all my books, and there's a stack of them there because I'm using them right now. These different books I have about traditional strength programs, you would always pick an exercise, and on day 1, you do 1 set of as many as you could. That's how you started off. And maybe you got to 8 reps, and you would continue till you got 10 reps with this exercise, just 1 set, and then 12 reps, and then you'd have to make a decision. Which leads us to the next. Okay, so I got 1 set of 12. Let me try doing 2 sets now. That instantly doubles the volume. And if you do 3 sets, it's going to triple. After a while, you find yourself doing 10 sets of, whatever, a lot high rep, 10 sets of 20 with the lift. And, 200 reps, it's time now to add load. Like, I don't know how many reps of the curl I could do with the empty bar, the 20 kilo or 45 pound bar. But I'm pretty sure that, Martin, if you and I were standing next to each other and we went, I go, you go, we could probably get 10 sets of 20 in. The impact on the body would be, maybe some tendon issues or ligament issues or just, I don't know. But the actual long-term impact would be almost 0. It's time now, volume, it's time to go to load. And with load, it's pretty simple. It's intensity. We're going to add weight. And as we add weight, The nervous system has to kick in, the hormone cascade happens, all these wonderful things hit. After a while, you really can't add much load after a while. And it's interesting because you look at the German studies in the 1950s, we humans tend to have this ceiling we hit. Now, of course, my job as a strength coach is to teach you how to get out, punch through that ceiling. Now, a lot of people would, recommend, drugs and stuff like that. I don't. There's all kinds of little ways to do it. I mean, I like adding chains. I like, changing the equipment. I like adding more speed. I like slowing things down. And then you get to the point where, good. So we've gotten strong. We're at a good place volume-wise, a good place load-wise. How do we make things, how do we now tax the system to the next step? Well, now we're with you, Martin. We want to do more work in less time, and that's called density, and that's density training. You mentioned a few ways here. Back-to-back sets is what you call traditional training versus supersets and circuits. Circuit training is how I learned how to lift weights when I went to high school. My junior high program was barbell lifts. We did power cleans, military, front squat, bench press. When I went to high school, the coaches had us do circuit training because circuit training would have been, it was a popular thing in the 60s and 70s. It's a great way to get 20 to 40 people, all training at once. We did the 30-30-30. We did the minute on, minute off. The coach would blow a whistle and you do the lift or whatever it was, for a minute, and then blew the whistle, you'd stop and you go, whoa, that was a lot. And then you move to the next exercise. The $1 million answer is this, Martin. Volume, load, and density all are marvelous training devices. You have to have all of them somehow in your system. You could just, turn yourself into it might even work. I love cyclical training ideas, train with the seasons, but, maybe fall is volume time, get all those get all the big numbers in. Winter, go heavy, go hard, go home, get your intensity. And then you want to look pretty in spring and summer. So you do all that, the circuits and the complexes and those kinds of things. It's not a bad idea at all. In fact, my brain's going, that's actually a really good idea. Is there a value in, like what you said here, you're going to do pull-ups, squats, sit-ups, press, and then you rest, and then you do it again, pull-ups, then you rest. Is there a value? In the 60s, there was a discussion about that your heart is going to send, if you're doing curls, it's going to send blood to the biceps. Then it's going to send blood to the calves. Then it's going to send blood to the midsection. Then it's going to send blood to the shoulders. I don't think that's entirely true, but the idea is that when you do one exercise followed by another, the muscles remain fresh, but the entire system is getting tapped out. And it's interesting because back in the 70s, Arthur Jones invented this concept called metabolic conditioning, which is usually called Metcons now. Sadly, it's been so overabused that the concept is barely even recognizable from what the original was. There is probably 3 kinds of conditionings, and I think any listener would know. The first one is that, there's a cardiovascular unit, and let's be honest, if you have your heart rate at 190, for 10 minutes, you're probably, either something horrible is going to happen, you're being chased by a shark or, a pack of wolves, or something's happening and you need medical intervention. You probably need intervention of both kinds, no matter what the story is. You just can't stay at that level. There's this next kind of conditioning. This is called strength, or where I'm doing a set of 12, and then I get to 13, and maybe you put your fingers on it, help it. I'm going beyond what my strength levels have ever been. And if I bring the bar down slow as I can on 14, we're still hitting that strength level even harder. The third one, the metabolic conditioning, Martin, which your kind of training is an interesting thing, because if we do a traditional high intensity workout, say like we take 315 pounds in the squats, that's the first exercise. I've done 30 reps with 315. So the first exercise, you have me do 315 for 31 or 32. So when we tank that bar up, I'm blown up. Then we walk over to the curl, and I do 135 for 10. And I'm, that set of curls is right after that set of squats. So my metabolism is washed up. Then we hop over to the dip rack. No, hold on, man. I've done 35 dips in my life, and I didn't do it today. And I get up there and I start dipping, and I only get to 3 or 4 or 5. But by then, if you check my heart rate, it's come down. And I haven't done any of these muscles. These muscles are fresh, but I'm wiped out. I can't get 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 or 15 reps. That is that concept I talked about in the early 70s called metabolic conditioning and fatigue. My heart rate might be high from those squats. My breathing might be, highish, but I have a fresh set of muscles. So what I think the advantage of training in a circuit fashion is you are chasing that metabolic fatigue. Now, having said that, if all you ever do is metcoms, you get to the point where it just becomes a game that you're just manipulating the rules. The body quickly gets kind of full of, oh boy, I've done, those idiotic burpee workouts I see, or this or that, where people just go, the body figures that stuff out, and your brain figures it out, and you start playing these games to get these extra reps in. So, Martin, I'd always recommend this. Big fan of circuit training, but make sure you're taking care of some volume work, and make sure you're taking care of some heavier load work, months at a time, I would say. Months at a time with both of those. And then with your circuits, do them, and then get back to the volume, get back to the load, get back to your circuits. And I would move things around a little bit. Try not to do the same thing all the time. And honestly, I think you'll see great progress if you do that. So fun question, Martin. I really appreciate that. Okay, I got a question from Keith. He says this: I've just finished 40 workouts on easy strength. I did 2 sets of 5 in the deadlift, bench press, and 1-arm kettlebell row. I also did loaded carries and worked up to 1 set of 10 on my knees with the ab wheel. The ab wheel and I are not friends. I don't thank you, Keith. I have definitely gained strength and feel good. I've also dropped 5 kilos in body weight in that time. So for my Americans, the guy dropped 11 pounds lifting weights. That's awesome. So I was thinking rinse and repeat, right? This time I increased, I'm interested in the 2-week rotation of exercises in even easier strength. My question is, in the even easier strength article, you talk about performing squats and suggest changing the exercise up every 2 weeks like the other exercises. I also know you suggest that squats, for some reason, don't really work on easy strength. Am I missing something? Yeah, you're looking at something I wrote in 2011 versus something I wrote in 2023. That has 12 years of experience, 12 years of testing. Squats are hard to work in easy strength. They just are. I talk in the book, Easy Strength Omni book, available at danjohnuniversity.com/bookstore. I give you 3 whole chapters on why I don't think they work, and then another chapter on how to make them work, maybe. It's just, for most of the North Americans I work with, and some of the Europeans, we're not built to squat. We squat, but we're just not built for it. So for a lot of us, the squat takes 2 sets of 5 with a reasonable weight takes out way more than, and have to do that the next day doesn't work. You're not missing anything. I also talked earlier in the podcast here about the push, pull, hinge, squat continuum. I'm not born to squat. I'm born to pull. I can deadlift. I can snatch, deadlift, swing, clean 5, 6, 7, 10 times a week and come back for more. But if I have to squat, clean, and squat, snatch, and front squat, I need time off. That's me, but it's also a lot of people I work with. So that's why we pulled that out. Should I add squats or continue with push, pull, hinge, and just use a squat in the warm-up? That is what I recommend in the book. I use the goblet squat, overhead squat combo in my first 40 workouts. I think that's great. I got to tell you, in fact, gentle listeners, for those you don't, I got this exercise called the goblet squat to overhead squat, where it's just you do a goblet squat, then basically just overhead squat, a broomstick, but it really does work your flexibility and mobility. It really lubes the squatting movement and the overhead. So your shoulders and your hips get a great warm up. So I think that's a great way to warm up for this. I would stick to what you're doing. And there's this one last little part here. I'm 50 years old and work shifts. And then he mentions, I wish I'd have known this 20 years ago. But at 50 working shifts, this is a pretty good little program. I would say one thing, and Keith, make sure you're getting your walking in, okay? Make sure you're getting your walking in. So if you can, after those workouts, get a little walk in, especially post 50, okay? This is great. I hope I answered your question. But easy strength questions are almost universally answered by do it. It's not always the best answer. All right, thank you. We have a question from Michael. I am currently training some high school basketball players. Well, okay, I won't comment. The boys are making great progress with their basic kettlebell exercises. Interesting, you're using kettlebells. One thing I'd like to do is work on their physical toughness, especially their ability to take a hit and dish out punishment. These are good kids, meaning they don't act temperamentally towards violence. Obviously, football training drills do this, but that is a different sport. And their parents and the boys are very wary of too much contact because of the injury risk of basketball. The boys are developing some decent levels of strength, so that in itself doesn't seem to be a limiting factor. What kind of drills would you recommend to make the kids be able to take a charge, box out more aggressively, or be formidable in the basketball game? Yeah, have them quit basketball and start wrestling. And I'm actually going to give you, that's literally my advice, but I'll try to make it simpler. Yeah, that's, I think back when I was in high school and I was in 6th period athletic PE. And one time our coach came up with the idea of having a basketball tournament. And my team, the endoplasmic reticulums, won. I remember Steve Ludwig was on the team. And we played the basketball team and we beat them because they didn't count fouls. You could have as many fouls as you want in a PE class. So, it was freaking hockey out there, okay? It was bad. I'm not proud of it. But, outside of playing other sports, the thing I would recommend to you is tumbling. Tumbling, which is an essential part of American football, rugby, wrestling. Tumbling is a great thing. We used at the schools I've worked at, I've been very lucky being able to use the wrestling room, but I also got myself a cheerleader tumbling mat. And they're these mats, they roll out. They're relatively reasonable. It's interesting because in our weight room, I had a tumbling mat going down it, and then I got these strips of AstroTurf. So down the middle of the weight room was a tumbling mat and AstroTurf so that we could do loaded carries, sprint drills, hurdle stuff, all kinds of stuff. And at the same time, the athlete next to you was doing cartwheels and tumbling. Fascinating to think, when I left the school, the assistant coaches complained, but the administration decided to put in a whole bunch of bodybuilding equipment down the middle instead of areas for tumbling, hurdle work, and loaded carries. Because the reason I say that is because tumbling, loaded carries, and hurdle work are probably the three best things you can do with most high school athletes. But tumbling, you could start off, I was about to say with basic rolls, but you could start off with basically teaching them things like the leopard crawl, Spider-Man crawl, G.I. Joe crawl, bear crawl. You could do things as simple as somersaults, forward rolling, shoulder rolling, combinations of shoulder rolling. We used to call them ninja rolls, right, left, cartwheels, both directions, round offs, both directions, and really teach them the basics of tumbling. And the reason I recommend it is you said physical toughness is when you hit the ground and get back up, I think you really learn things. You might also find, as we found, is that we had great injury prevention. Our shoulder injuries went from being epidemic before I got there to none after in American football, because the kids who took it seriously learned how to roll and tumble instead of reaching for the ground and popping their, separating their shoulder. They would hit and roll and get back up. There was a film of one of our soccer football players falling backwards, doing a backwards roll, tucked up, and scored a goal, which I thought was just amazing to watch. So that's my recommendation. Other people would find other things, but you talk a lot about physical toughness here, and of course, maybe it's because I come from a military family, but physical toughness starts with mental toughness, Michael, and that's something you're gonna also have to figure out what to do. Find out the kids who aren't afraid at the end of the game of a 1-on-1 shot. So I hope that helped. That's my idea. Okay, tumbling, wrestling, interesting. I even think now that I'm talking about the loaded carries, hurdles, and tumbling runs, if you can get your kids to do suitcase carries followed by a tumbling run followed by hurdle walkovers, I think that'll do as much for their athletic ability as most of the nonsense we do in the weight room. Fun question. Thank you. We got a question from Dilip, and Dilip says, "Hi, Coach. He is a 53-year-old male living in the Middle East. He's read Easy Strength and have two questions. Should I do kettlebell swings, 5 sets of 15 plus goblet squats plus kettlebell deadlifts, or should I do any two of these exercises?" Well, okay, there's a little bit of an issue here, because if you're doing Easy Strength, I would suggest, and I think 5 sets of 15 is a magical number for Easy Strength. It's only 75 reps, and we took a long time figuring this out. I thought the minimum effective dose of swings every day was like, 500, 250. And then I started working with, a lot more people and realized that is way too much. And over time, I slowly brought it down to about 75 reps being that repeatable, doable number. And I think 5 sets of 15 is the best way to get there, because you can pick a load and stick with it. Certainly, 3 by 25 works the same, but the load will be a little bit too light, so you can hang on those last reps. But if you're doing the Easy Strength and you're doing the kettlebell, so if you're doing the goblet squat in the warm-up, as a warm-up, and then the 5 sets of 15, I think that's pretty good. You add kettlebell deadlifts. I'm not a big fan of kettlebell deadlifts in Easy Strength. Now, Dilip, if that's the only equipment you have, then of course, you do it. There's nothing wrong with that. Kettlebell deadlifts don't tend to be heavy enough for most people. Now, there's a workaround where you do like 3 sets of 20 in the kettlebell deadlift, and that's in the book, Return of the Kettlebell. But it's really, it's not bad. But not a lot of people really want to do 3 sets of 20 in the double kettlebell deadlift or whatever very long. It is I hate it when I say it's boring, but that's the feedback I get. People look at you like, oh, it's just dull, and it takes a long time. Okay, so question number 2. For fat loss, you recommend 45 minutes, half an hour to 45 minutes post after the loaded carries. Should the walk be brisk, or should I keep my heart rate up in the fat burning zone? Yes, 180 minus my age. And he says, but it is age because he's 53. It's just a stroll. That's absolutely correct. Remember and memorize this, all of you. And his goals are to lose 10 kilos and get stronger, which I like because I think a lot of people, those are 2 good goals for everybody. So one of the things you're going to find, and it's kind of frustrating in a way, it's almost an X about how the human body works. As you work harder and harder and harder, you get more and more calories. So as you work harder and harder and harder, you become much more of a carb burner. When you're going easy, remember the 3 best fat burning exercises are sleeping, sitting, and walking, okay? As the intensity goes up, now it's not perfect. There's a little bit of a dip here, then it goes up, but this is as good as for now. So as your intensity goes up, your fat burning goes almost, it's not exact, but so if you're just walking gently, you're probably going to be burning fat more. It's not as simple as I'm making it, but it's still good enough. And as you increase the intensity, you slide over to burning more and more sugars. So one of the things people find out, and I've worked with people. I've been at public gyms in Utah with the person shaking their head going, I did this and I can't believe, and almost tears too. I can't believe that when I eased up, I lost more fat. When I stopped trying to impress people on Instagram the people in the gym, I got better. So that brisk walk for you where your heart rate is, hey man, I'm 66. When I look at these numbers, I'm like, all I got to do to get in my fat burning zone sometimes is put on a light, a 4 or 5 kilo vest, 10 pounds, and just move my arms a little bit. And I'm right there in my fat burning zone. And I just, that's too easy. It might be too easy, but I'm making the best progress of my adult life in this particular goal by doing a few lifts, going for a walk. I used to feel terrible after I would work out. Now I feel great. And my body looks better, feels better. I move better in some ways. It's not, I'm not 17 anymore, but I move well. I feel good. And it is, I got to tell you from the heart, I find it frustrating. I feel like we've been lied to by the fitness industry a long time. This idea that, if you're not bleeding out of your eyes, you didn't work out hard enough. It drives people away. 14% of people in America have equipment or a gym membership, but we all know that only 1 in 20 Americans exercise regularly. And it's interesting because the numbers are actually going up, but it's almost universally the elderly. We just don't exercise it. And I think it's because, if you're not, a pile of goo at the end of the workout, you didn't train hard enough. There's a How I Met Your Mother where the very first thing the personal trainer, besides calling the guy a bitch, which I think is just, people get on me because I'm politically incorrect all the time. It's like, this is a TV show, give me 100 push-ups. Day 1, first workout, first words out of her mouth, do 100 push-ups. Whew, that's a lot of push-ups if you're untrained. And I can only imagine if you did it, some other issues. If you don't just, jack up your joints, you're probably going to jack up something else. That was a rant. I'll slow up a little bit. And then I tell people, do 5 lifts, 2 sets of 5, and then go for a walk, and all your dreams come true. They can't hear it, but it works. And the sad thing, I can't sell most of the good stuff I tell you people. I can't sell more sleep. I can't sell more water. I can't sell more gentle walking. Yeah, but those 3 things are probably the 3 of the most important things you can do for your body composition goals. Thank you, Dill. That was a good question. I enjoyed it. I thought I'd ramble longer on it, but I think I got to stop now. Well, listen, that was episode 222 of the Dan John University podcast. Each and every week, I sit down and answer your questions. If you have some, send them to podcast@danjohnuniversity.com. I'll do my best to answer each and every one. Thanks so much. And until next time, let's all keep on lifting and learning.